the people of Congo are saying with this proverb?
One can interpret in many ways. But what quickly comes to mind is the time you waste concentrating on one issue and the opportunity that a third party seizes, and you find that you are the losers because you concentrated narrowly on one issue. That's what quickly comes to mind.
That is absolutely spot on.
Thank you.
Absolutely spot on.
Kabisa, So just focus on something. You are arguing and squabbling, and you're actually not looking at it as an opportunity anymore.
Yes.
Now you're
more concerned about the fight than the opportunity.
Yeah.
Someone else sees the opportunity, doesn't waste time, takes it, gone.
Yeah. Then you start arguing. Oh, we were here first. Shauri yenu. Dr. David Gikungu, the Kenya Meteorological Department had told us earlier that there was going to be some heavy rainfall in this period and likelihood of El Nino. And we have now seen some heavy rainfall. But our president had said that you had told him that there may not be rainfall. Do we have El Nino now, or do we not have El Nino?
Good question.
It's a good question.
It is a good question. Posed to the weatherman. And having listened to what you are referring to, there's really no big issue or even departure from what he said, because he said that there will be a lot of rainfall.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we are experiencing. May I add that with El Nino or without El Nino, we have two main rainfall seasons in East Africa. The long rains that start from March up to May, and the other one that we refer to as short rains, October, November, December, which is the season that we are in. And every year, unless we have observed anything else that would result in a departure from that, we expect rainfall. So, and seasons are not the same. So if he says there will be a lot of rainfall, even if there was no El Nino, he would still be right.
Okay.
The point I would make is that the forecast that we would make for a season like this one is not something that just happens abruptly. We started observing the possibility of an El Nino early in the year, around April, and when you continue watching those signals and they are positive up to June, you then get positive about that. And the forecast that is then issued in August, especially for the group of countries for the Eastern Greater Horn of Africa, that one is mentioned, that there is a strong possibility of an El Nino event.
Yes.
Come September and towards the end, I make the announcement for Kenya, the national seasonal forecast. And I talked about the same, that we expect El Nino enhanced rainfall. You will then ask me what El Nino is, because I think that is the problem that we have.
Okay.
When people talk about El Nino in Kenya, they are talking about rainfall. But in general, this is not what it means to everyone.
Okay.
come back to Kenya itself. It is not every El Nino event that we have had that has resulted in a lot of rainfall, such as we have seen. It's actually statistical. You can look at the data. We've had a number. For example, 2016. I don't think we talk a lot about 2016. Yet it was a strong El Nino. The phenomenon was quite strong. The signal that we call El Nino, it was quite strong. So maybe we need to.
So what did we have in 2016? We had El Nino. How did it manifest? Was it rain? Was it heat? Was it
It
wind?
manifested as a normal rainfall season. Normal means when you take an average of what we've observed for a period of about 30 years for any station, you come up with what we call long-term means or long-term averages. And so when you're making a forecast, you are normally looking at what you expect against the long-term mean. And what we got in 2016 was really not, there wasn't much of what you would call a departure. El Nino, the signal for El Nino is not observed in isolation. There are other factors. For example, the temperature differences between what we observe over the Western Indian Ocean, which is along our coastline, and Indonesia. For a long period of time, I think five seasons in a row, we had a negative signal. We call it Indian Ocean dipole. It was negative for a long time. Early this year, it started showing positivity. When it is positive, and you have a positive El Nino signal, you are going for a strong El Nino event here over the East African region, and you are also going for the possibility of enhanced rainfall.
Let me ask you, Dr.
Yes, please ask.
When you were giving the regional forecast in August and the country forecast in September, and you said likelihood and high possibility of an El Nino enhanced rainfall season for October, November, December, were you telling us to prepare for extraordinarily heavy rainfall? Or were you telling us just, there's going to be rain as usual, but there's a dipole that's now positive on the other side, whose effect we will not feel? What exactly were you telling the country?
As I answer you, terms first. When I say possibility, it is because there are many determinant drivers which could step in and either reduce what has been foreseen or even cause a delay. But what we meant then was akin to what we call early warning systems.
Okay.
And that is why we give the forecast at least 1 month before the event starts to provide advice or awareness or even alertness for preparations for the various players or users of such information. Key among them is the government. And I'm happy to mention here that the government took us seriously. I was even called to make a presentation at a meeting that was presided over by everybody in government, led by the deputy president. I made a presentation. I am told it was scaring, and the description for that is because of what I'm calling a delay because of various drivers. But the delay mainly was in Nairobi. In most of the parts of the country that I mentioned in that forecast, they actually started receiving excess rainfall in the middle of October, and there are some parts that started receiving rainfall in September. Why do I mention this? normally, if you go to what I had mentioned earlier about statistics or long-term means, when you are planning an outdoor event, the month to peak normally would be September. This was a different September. It was wet over many parts of the country almost throughout the month. And what we were saying in the subsequent forecasts was that when the season starts, it will largely be a continuation, especially over Western Kenya. It will largely be a continuation into the main short range season, and this is what we've been observing.
Okay. Yeah. Dr. Kikungu, is it, you mentioned that, and indeed is the case, when we hear El Nino, for a lot of people, all we see then is rain, and a lot of it, and flooding, etc., etc. So I think it's important to just go over what it actually is. What does El Nino mean when you talk about an El Nino phenomenon? What are we looking at exactly?
Can I add something? And that when we talk about it, is it the same phenomenon that what I've just said?
Yes.
Is it the same thing that is witnessed, say, for instance, in the East African coast, as the one witnessed on the West African coast, in Latin America, in India? Are they similar?
By the way, I had an arrangement with somebody to bring me some hot water. I need some.
And now the arrangement stands.
Okay. And it's hot water.
Yes, hot water, specifically. Yes. Because now we are talking about hot issues. Okay, let's start there. What is El Nino? El Nino means the boy child in Spanish. It was coined El Nino de Nevada. This was coined by Spanish fishermen because of the timing. They observed that there was some general warming of the water of the western coast of South America. This would happen around December. And it's also referred to as the translation reads something like the Christ child, because of I think it's around Christmas time, but the timing of the waters, the fishermen know, and this is observation that was made in around 1600. It's fairly long ago. What we observe is that generally the flow of winds, what we call trade winds, the general flow is from east to west. Around that time they observed that the winds would weaken, and when they weaken, that water, the water of Australia would flow back towards this coast of South America, and it would certainly have an effect, because it would affect the planktons and other sea animals that the fish would feed on, and so on. And so they would notice that the fetch would normally be lower during that period. And to date, it's not been possible to establish a pattern because it's not uniform. What we know is that it repeats itself between 2 and 7 years. And what it is associated with, that is now what is largely known. There is an opposite effect that is called La Nina. But before I mix myself, this phenomenon does not impact parts of the world in a similar way. When we are looking at the El Nino phenomenon resulting in enhanced rainfall here. It is causing drought, long periods of drought over Australia, which I mentioned when I was explaining about the flow of water, the temperatures, and so on. And so it happens in pockets. It's not something uniform around the world. Another thing is, even within Africa, there are places where El Nino does not necessarily result in a lot of rainfall. It's the opposite. There are also countries where if it is La Nina, they get something. If it is El Nino, they get something. So it is not everywhere where it is as distinct as we have observed it in East Africa. And as I mentioned, even within East Africa, there have to be other accompanying drivers. Thank you.
So, Ekari, what I hear you to be saying is that the one distinct feature about El Nino is that it's unpredictable, unusual weather patterns. It's something that occurs, yes, but it's not what you are accustomed to. It's something that, in terms of timing, in terms of appearance, in terms of manifestation, it is not quite what you're used to.
And it is not quite what you are saying.
This is very good.
Yeah, because observation is there. We observe it.
Yes.
And if we observe it from April going up to June, and there is uniformity, and probably it is also increasing in terms of strength. Because when you talk about signal, you're talking about, is it positive, is it
negative? Yes.
It is such that now in our science offices, it makes sense to assign an officer that particular role to just monitor this, because it has impacts. And the advice that comes from that desk will be serious if you are observing right, and we observe right.
So what we are observing right now in the country, is it in line with what you had started seeing January, February up to June? What you now got a bit of certainty in August into September. What is happening now? Is it what you had seen? Is it what all your indicators had actually shown that this is what's going to be happening in Kenya around October, November, December?
It is so. It is what we have.
To what degree? 98%? 100%?